Welcome back to 60 Plus Uncensored. I'm your host, Seb Frey, and my guest today is Professor Pete Alexander, TEDx speaker, best-selling author of Lighten Your Day, certified laughter yoga instructor, and a guy who ended up in the ER 1 hour from a coma because of chronic stress. Safe to say he figured some things out after that. So without further ado, let's get into it. Pete, thank you so much for joining me today on 60 Plus Uncensored. It's really great to have you. For those of us who are not familiar with Professor Pete Alexander, why don't you take a moment or two and introduce yourself to my audience?
Sure. Well, Seb, thank you so much for having me on your wonderful show, and I really appreciate your listeners' time as well. Oh gosh, I have so many different things that I'm grateful that keep me busy. I'm the president of what I consider the greatest interior landscaping company in the San Francisco Bay Area, Office Plants by Everything Grows. I am a laughter yoga ambassador, where I take people through laughter exercises to help reduce their stress. I'm an improv comedy performer, and I'm a former professor of marketing, where I inspired students from all over the world to create marketing plans based on their specific interests.
Well, that's interesting. I'm all about marketing plans, so maybe we could talk about that too. There's so many things that you just talked about, which for me personally, forget my audience for a minute, are just so keenly interesting, like stand-up comedy, right? Like I personally have always thought that would be my backup career, right? Like I just love stand-up comedy, and not to say that I'm funny or anything like that, but I just think that it would be a wonderful way to go. And I know that most stand-up comics are like depressed and bipolar or whatever, right? But I just think that it would be, no, is that not true? I don't know.
Well, for the ones that are the individual stand-ups, yes. But the ones that perform improv comedy like I do, we're in a group, we're in a troupe. And so it's more of a family thing. And what is wonderful about doing improv is that your castmates are there to help support you. And it's an incredible thing. And I absolutely love the fact that we take suggestions from the audience as opposed to having something scripted. So it makes it a huge difference. And if you can get over the worry of making a mistake, the reality is when you make a mistake on stage, often that's funnier than something that you come up with on the spot. So, so if you can just let go of that and, the perfection that a lot of us have, that is a wonderful thing. And so I just really enjoy it. And it's fun to bring laughter to my community.
Well, tell me more about that. There's an improv troupe, you say?
Yep. Yep. I'm actually a member of two. So I keep
So
pretty busy with it.
is this like a national organization of improv troops, or is this like a local thing that you found, or how does this work?
So local. So what ended up happening was when I first moved to the area where I live now, we have a monthly newsletter that comes out. And it has an events calendar, and I saw on the events calendar that there was an improv going on at the community center, and I thought, oh, okay, I'll go because I thought that it was a show. Well, it turns out that it was just a practice, and they had blocked the time in the community center for their practices. And so they said, if you'd like to do you have any experience with improv? And I had taken a couple improv classes in San Francisco, and so I said that I had that experience. They said, oh, well, why don't you just join us? And I had so much fun, and they asked me to be a regular. And then one of the members of that troupe is also a member of a different troupe, and they had an opening, and she asked me to come and try out. And so I'm a member of both.
How big are these troops exactly?
So you mean in terms of numbers?
Yeah, people.
Yeah, so basically, one of them, the first one that I talked about, we have 7 members, and the other one has 5.
Okay, all right. Well, it's interesting because I ask if it's a national organization because just recently, I mean like 2 or 3 weeks ago, a improv whatever, like, what is it? The community improv thing basically just opened up at the La Selva Beach Clubhouse right down the road from me. And people can come and just get up on stage and do improv comedy. And I thought
Yes.
maybe this is a thing that's sweeping the nation.
Well, it could be, it could very well be. It's, I see troops start up at any point because as long as you don't have a fear of being up on stage, improv is relatively easy because you don't have to do any, memorization of scripts or anything. You just basically have to have a plan as far as, okay, what games are we going to do? And so the games might, are different things. And there's, with improv, there's hundreds of different games. And so all you do is what the game you're going to do and who's volunteering to be up on stage for that game. And then the rest is based on the audience, because the audience gives us the keys, like what is the relationship about the people on stage? What is the topic? What direction are we going? What location are we in? It really depends on what the game is and what the input is we get from the audience. The only time that, for me, the only time that improv is difficult is when we have an audience that doesn't want to participate. That's when it makes it harder, because if you have an audience where only one person is giving suggestions, then it's kind of like, so that's a little harder. But if you have several people who are yelling out suggestions when we ask the audience for, give us a favorite cereal, give us a unique or odd place to go on vacation, like that one, for example. We've had suggestions like Chernobyl and different ones where it makes it a lot of fun to be able to act that out, because when you get a really fun suggestion, it just opens the door for so much creativity, and that's the part that's magic.
And you call it a game. What, you said there's hundreds of games, like
Yeah. Skits.
Why do you call it a
Skits.
game? Skits.
We call it games because for us it's having fun with this game. But it's a skit. So what is the skit that we're gonna do? Like, for example, one of our ones that we love doing is called Lines from a Hat, and that's a traditional one that we'll do almost every show near the end of the show. And what happens is during intermission, we ask the audience to write down a funny line, or it doesn't even have to be a funny line, a famous line, or a line that they just want us to potentially select in the Lines from a Hat skit. And so what happens is that we'll have 2-3 people up there on stage, and the audience will give us, again, a relationship, a location, whatever it happens to be, and we'll start acting it out, and then we cue up. So something like, let's say you and I were on stage, and let's say we were brothers, and at one point I say, Mom always told me this about you. And then we open up a line. So we haven't read, we don't have no idea what these lines are. We've just selected them from a hat, but we can't look at them ahead of time. And a lot of the times it makes absolutely no sense because, it might be something like, whatever, what Mom always told me about you. And then you're going to need a bigger boat is the line, or something that, so you have to make that work somehow. But there's times where the line will be so perfect, and that makes it golden. It's sort of like when I used to play golf years ago before kids. And I used to say, why do I golf? Because it's a nice walk ruined. But what happens is that there's always that one shot that I used to have where, okay, that shot's going to get me to come back. And with Lines from a Hat, when you get that, whoever it is, because we usually have 2 or 3 rounds of it with different characters or different cast members. And when you get that absolutely perfect line that goes in the skit, oh my God, it's so memorable. And people, the audience members, will see them out in the community, and they literally will remember that months, if not years, after that one line, because it's just so hilarious.
Right. So how many people are in the audience typically for these improv gigs?
It could be as small as 20 to we've well over 100.
Oh, wow. And so these are
Yeah.
like in like little community centers or community theaters or
Community theaters and community centers, correct.
right. And are they serving drinks at these things or is it
Depending on the location. Yeah. Yeah. Most of the if it's a community center, usually they're only serving coffee, tea, cookies. If it's a community theater, then usually they're selling wine, and beer as well. And then we've had ones like we had one at actually twice at an American Legion, and that has a full bar, and so people can get the hard alcohol. And we always tell people if they're serving alcohol, that we're way funnier the more drinks you have.
right? That's very true. So this sounds really interesting to me, but I just know, like for me, like I just find inappropriate things to be hilarious, right? So like I would just say inappropriate stuff all the time, and what happens when when you do that? I mean, like, do people get booed off the stage? Does a cane come and yank them off, or like, is there like a limit you can't cross, or?
So what we try and do is all of our shows, we try and say, okay, we're going to do PG-13. And the reason is because we typically are going to have some under 18 kids in the audience. So we have to be a little bit careful about that. So there's going to be certain topics that we won't necessarily, do a joke on or say something. So we have to be mindful of that. But normally it's how it's often said, okay, don't say anything about politics or religion. Well, that's fair game for the most part, so we can do that. But there's going to be a couple things that probably are not going to be things that we would bring up, like child pornography, for example. That's not going to be something. Yeah, exactly. So
right.
We're not going to bring that up. But most everything else we can.
Right. Okay. All right. Good. Well, maybe, I mean, I have it on my list. Like I say, the improv troupe or whatever, community night or whatever they call it, is brand new here. And it's been on my phone. It's on Thursdays, which was yesterday. I didn't go, but they've only had like 3 so far. But I need to get down there and check it out. Have you always been interested in comedy, or what's your relationship with comedy over the years?
Well, I had to have a sense of humor given the horribly dysfunctional family that I grew up in. And so humor tended to be an escape for me. So, but I used to use a lot when I was young. I used to use a lot of dark humor because I was tapping into what I was feeling myself. So, and I've been an extra. I'm an extra. An extra that basically says, I have no problem being able to talk to other people. Being on stage is a different story, though, because you're performing, let's say. So you have to be able to be on. And that's, so there's what's called a stage persona. And so I would say that I try to be funnier on stage than I am in person. But most people who know me say that I'm actually a very funny person just in conversation too.
Do they mean that in a good way or a bad way?
A good way, in a good way. Well, and one of the things, like my kids will roll their eyes. They're both, one's almost 30, the other one's 25 going on 26. They'll roll their eyes when it's one of Dad's jokes, and one of my stepfathers was a child vaudeville star. And so I got some, probably over 100 jokes from him over the years. And it's not like I can, just say, oh, okay, let me just run off 10 jokes to you. What happens is that I wait for a particular word, phrase, something that I hear, and then in my mind, whoever I'm there with talking, because most of them are inappropriate jokes. But, so I have to think in my mind, okay, I know that joke, and is that appropriate for this audience? And so that happens to me all the time in my laughter yoga class, because somebody will say something or somebody will do something, and it'll, or the topic is a particular thing, and I think about it and I go, okay, is this one that I would want to tell? Sometimes I will, sometimes I won't, just depending on what the joke is. But so they'll roll their eyes because they'll say, oh, okay, that joke again. But what's fun is when I meet somebody new, and then it opens the door to rehash a lot of jokes because, hey, they haven't heard it yet. And it was hilarious because I don't know if you ever watched The Office, but there was Michael, Steve Carell's character. He, at one point, he tells this PG-13 joke about crabs. And so I told my kids that one. And then later, like a year later, my daughter sends me this text, and she goes, "You stole that crab joke from Michael in The Office." It's not like there's, it's not like there's this trademark on a joke. I'm not trying to make money on it. I've just told it, So, and that's true. I mean, it's there's, and I probably now, I must know 200, 300 jokes. And, depending on who I heard it from, and I've learned how to try and remember it. Sometimes, there's some good jokes that all of a sudden they're gone, because what I've learned that helps me is if I hear that joke, I have to repeat that joke in my head, and then I have to tell it 3 times. If I tell it 3 times, then it's implanted in my memory. But if I don't, then the potential of it getting lost, or me butchering the punchline or something, that's a real possibility.
Right. Well, now I have to ask. I need to hear one of these child vaudeville star jokes. Can you give me one? What's a child vaudeville star joke like?
Well, so keep in mind,
from like 100 years ago, right? I mean,
right. That's exactly it. But he started in vaudeville when he was 11 years old, and so he was drinking heavily and smoking 2 packs of cigarettes at 12.
Nice.
And that was just the thing that you do. So, So let's see. What would be one that he told me that would be not something totally offensive on here?
60 Plus Uncensored. Go ahead.
60 plus. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Uncensored here. You can just say anything you want to.
Okay. So this was one of his favorites. So these 2 elderly ladies are living in a rest home, and they're bored with their lives, totally bored. The activities and stuff aren't exciting them anymore. So what they decide to do is they decide to strip naked and walk through the main hall of the facility, right by the reception desk. And as they're walking by, they're doing this, they walk by 2 male residents in the same facility. And one of the male residents says to the other one, he says, "Was that Harriet and Matilda?" And the second guy goes, "I think so." And the first one says, "Well, what were they wearing?" And the second one goes, "I don't know, but whatever it was, it sure needed ironing."
But bump.
Exactly. See,
All
so
right.
the reason that one came up is because you reminded me it was 60 plus. So
Right.
boom, older clientele, boom. So that's how it works with these jokes.
Right. Well, are you 60 plus? How old are you? You look like you're
61.
borderline. You're
61.
61. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very good. Okay. Well, you qualify. Well, that's
Yep.
wonderful. Okay. So, but speaking of laughter, you have this whole thing like laughter yoga. What is going on with laughter yoga? What's the story
Oh,
there?
so you know how great it is, how it feels when you laugh out loud for a few seconds?
Yes.
Well, so what happens is our bodies, when we laugh for 5 to 6 seconds, and I'm talking either outwardly a laugh or even a chuckle, smile, whatever it is, if we do that for 5 to 6 seconds or more, our bodies automatically release positive endorphins that give us wonderful health benefits. 36 clinical studies from all over the world indicate the power of laughter. But here's the crazy thing. As smart as our bodies are, they don't know the difference between a real and a simulated laugh. Only knows that we're laughing. And so what happened was that there's cardiologist made in Qatar. He started this laughter because he understood the power of laughter. So he started a laughter club in India back in 1995. And what they did was they first started meeting. I think he said there were a half dozen people there, and they told jokes. Okay, that was great, really funny for the first couple days. Then they ran out of jokes. So then what do you do? And so what he changed it to was doing childlike things, because the reality is when we were children, we often would laugh over 100 times a day. Laugh, chuckle, smile, whatever it happens to be. As adults, with all of our responsibilities, we're lucky if we laugh 5 times a day. If you laugh 5 times a day, you're above the average, way above the average. So what laughter yoga is, it's called yoga, but the reality is because we're laughing, we automatically do deep yogic breathing. That's the yoga part of it. So there's no bringing mats to the class and doing all these stretches and stuff. No, we're doing fun, kid-like activities. So, and I bring what's fun for me is I bring also some improv games into it as well. So people do the laughter exercises, they do the improv exercises, and they just have a really good time. And it is an absolute joy to see how this has become a big family in the community. And people will see each other. They tell me this all the time, as well as when I'm in there. I might be at a restaurant and all of a sudden I'll start hearing ha 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 like this, and I'll turn around and it's somebody who's in class or has come to class, and they greet each other like that as well. Because what we're doing is we do the simulated laugh, and because laughter is contagious, we start laughing naturally. So it's really, really something. So you want to try an activity?
Sure. Let's try an activity.
Okay. So when I did my TEDx talk, I wanted to do a laughter exercise because it was all about rejection. And one of the things that I used to overcome the rejection was laughter. And so what I did was I took the audience through a particular activity. So go ahead and hold your hand out like you were holding your cell phone, okay? And I want you to imagine receiving, no, don't hold your real phone. Don't hold, because what happens is
modeling it so I know how to do it.
Exactly, because the reason why you don't want to have your real phone is because if you do get a text, you're going to get distracted. So,
right. Don't want
all
that.
right. Now, so what happens is you go ahead and you're pretending like you're holding your cell phone. And then imagine that you just received a challenging text or email message from a person or organization that you respect. And just stare at that message for a few seconds and think about how that makes you feel. Now, with your other hand, go ahead and point at that imaginary message. And together, we're going to just laugh out loud for 10 seconds. like this. So let's do it. Now, how do you feel?
Much better than I did before I started laughing, that's for sure.
That's
Absolutely.
exactly. Yep. So what happens is it by laughing at something that's challenging, what it does is it resets us. So it makes us lighter and better grounded to take on whatever that message is. Because we, unfortunately, our brains are continuously, with all the stress that we deal with as adults, continuously is dumping cortisol and adrenaline into our bodies. And when that happens, it's all fine for short-term, issues. But if it's something that's just percolating inside of us continuously, what ends up happening is that continuously stresses our bodies. And if we don't do something to relieve that stress, it's going to continuously percolate until something breaks in your body. And that's laughter is a wonderful one because you can do it at any point, and it feels so good, and you don't have to have a reason to laugh. You laugh for no reason. That's the key to laughter yoga.
Right. Well, as they say, sometimes you just have to laugh, and and I think I laugh a lot, and honestly, I think a lot of times it's bitter laughter, right? Is bitter laughter okay? It's just any kind of laughter is okay.
Any kind of laughter, as long as it's something, and again, it doesn't have to be a full outward laugh. It can be a chuckle, it could be a smile, it could be a silent laughter. That it just, like, for example, one of the things that you probably have experienced this, at times in your life where you're sitting next to a friend or somebody and they start giggling quietly. Like my wife and I, we were at this concert, this piano concert several years ago at the community center. And it had this overall sense of being snooty, right? So it was all serious. And we're sitting there, and our angle, so the guy who was playing the piano, he was a wonderful pianist. He had somebody sitting next to him who was flipping the pages on his notebook, songbook, whatever it is. And the way that it looked to us is the person who was flipping the pages, his head was coming out of the pianist's body in this just funny, awkward look. And and the way that the pianist would move and stuff, you had to see it. I mean, we if we would have videoed it, it would have gone viral, let me tell you. And so we're sitting there and we're just and and we know that we can't laugh out loud because this was a serious concerto, and it just was like, oh my gosh. And, and people were looking at us because we were just kind of like this wiggling, because they didn't know what was funny, but they were looking at us and smiling too, because laughter's contagious. They have no idea what they're laughing at. We did, but they had no idea what we were laughing at, but they couldn't help but laugh, except for a couple snooty people who were thinking that we were, we should be serious and just be upright and just, and then do the polite applaud.
Bravo.
Yes, exactly.
Well, so laughter is the best medicine. And so you're talking about cortisol and stress. And so I have to ask, you're a professor. You're a professor of what exactly? Of
marketing.
Of marketing. But yet here you're talking about cortisol and stress. Do you have any kind of like a formal training in this? Like, what kind of research have you done on it? Because I am all about like fighting stress and cortisol, right? Like, I know it's toxic and I know it's corrosive, and we all have a lot of stress in our lives. Not all of us. Some of us are blessed to have no stress in our lives, but like maybe people who are retired and wealthy, they're maybe stress free, but like I have a lot of stress. So like, where can people go and learn about, different ways of combating stress? I mean, like, is laughter really the best medicine for combating stress?
It's one of them. I mean, the research I did. So you know how people talk about street smart? That's exactly what happened to me with stress in my body because I wasn't listening to all the stress that I was under. So what ended up happening is I ended up first in 2008. So I had a perfect storm of stressful activities that culminated in my diagnosis with stress-induced diabetes. But the problem was I didn't listen to what my body was telling me. And I continued to burn the candle at both ends for another 10 years until I ended up in 2018 in the emergency room and in an extended stay in ICU with a severe case of diabetic ketoacidosis. And for the listeners who don't know what that is, basically my body was eating itself alive because of my stress. And I realized at that point, and it took a little bit more even for that. So when on my second day in ICU, so I got admitted when my blood sugars were so high that in the emergency room that the hospital glucometers couldn't read it. They just said high. And the lab had to manually estimate it. And they estimated my blood sugars to be 8 to 10 times higher than they should be. Well, what ended up happening is on my second day in ICU, I get a text from my boss. And the text, mind you, my boss knew that I was in the ICU.
Right.
And my text says at roughly 6 o'clock in the morning, you have a webinar you need to run later today. What are you going to do about it? And, most people should have said, give him the finger and said,
yeah, fuck you.
Exactly. But the way I was wired, because I'm a type A, type AAA personality, is I started going ahead and trying to reschedule that webinar, pushing the envelope of my phone. Because what a surprise, I didn't have my laptop, my work laptop in the ICU. Well, there was a nurse who was attending to me at that point, pretty much a complete stranger. And she comes over and they were checking my blood every 30 minutes to an hour. And while I was in ICU, my blood sugars had come back down, at least into the ranges where it wasn't critical anymore. It was still higher than it should be, but it had come down into more reasonable. And when she took the blood sugar or the blood reading from me, my blood sugars, like a 90-degree angle, started skyrocketing right back up. And she says to me, just matter-of-factly, she points at my phone and she says, you realize that's what put you in this hospital bed in the first place. And that was my epiphany moment. My family members, friends, they all were telling me that I was killing myself, but it was like, yeah. Well, when I had somebody who had no skin in the game tell me this, and I realized, okay, I am trading my health for my career. And that's a really bad trade. So I got out of the hospital a couple days later. I spent that last day and a half really thinking about that. And then I decided the day after I got out of the hospital to quit. And I did, for the first time in my life, I decided to focus on my health. And I started experimenting with different stress relief tools and techniques. And, a lot of them worked, some of them didn't. But what I noticed was that not only did my stress go down, my glucose numbers as a diabetic went down, my weight went down, and my energy level went way, way up. It was like I had discovered a fountain of youth. And if you saw a picture of me from 2008, so what's that, 18 years ago, and you look at me now, other than a little bit more gray hair, I look younger today than I looked 18 years ago. And that's what stress does to us. It ages us rapidly. So, after I started having these huge effects, my friends said, you ought to write a book about this. And so as a professor, I'm used to doing a lot of research. So I wrote a book that basically talks about what the stress can do to you, and and a whole bunch of different techniques on what you can do to try that don't take a lot of time. So basically, when I was looking at writing a book, I started finding out what other books are out there, and I found a lot of them on meditation, which is great, yoga, which is great, deep breathing, which is great, but most of us who are very busy don't have the time to read a 300-page book on deep breathing. They literally have 5 minutes.
If that.
Need to do so, if that, and and so I decided, what, I'm going to have this be primarily activities that you can do in 1 to 5 minutes. So of the 120 that are in the book, probably 110 of them you can do in 5 minutes or less. And and what's great about that, here's the thing. So something that works for me may not work for you, Seb, and vice versa. But if all you've got is 5 minutes and you try it, if it doesn't work, okay. Next time try something else. But when you find something that does work, then you use it regularly, because that's the absolute key. If you start using a stress relief technique when you're starting to feel that stress going up, what'll happen is once you get into the habit of using that, the compound benefits over time are amazing. But you got to start. You have to start today, not tomorrow, not next week, not next month, today, because we have to make it a habit. Clinical research shows that for humans, a habit doesn't happen until 23 to 60 days using it daily.
Right. So I want to talk about that, your book. But before I do, I need to ask you about stress-induced ketoacidosis. So how does stress, and now I know why you're an expert in stress. Okay, now you got your bona fides. Now we understand that you don't have to be a PhD in in biology, right? So stress-induced ketoacidosis. What's all that about? Like, how does stress give you ketoacidosis?
So great question. So if you were to go to the doctor and say, I heard somebody who got stress-induced diabetes. Well, technically, that's not accurate. What happens is when we don't properly address our stress, it causes cellular inflammation in our bodies. And that cellular inflammation is what leads to chronic disease. And in my case, it was diabetes. The thing that's crazy about it is no one in my family has diabetes. So what happens is that when we don't properly address our stress, our body continues to raise the bar and keeps on being higher and higher because it knows it needs to take care of itself. That's our autopilot. But if we don't respond to that, like for example, when my dad was dying back, and as part of that huge stressful thing that I had back in 2008, my back locked up so badly that when I visited him in the hospice, I couldn't stand, I couldn't sit, I couldn't do anything. And literally on my visits, I would lie on the tile floor next to his hospital bed to talk to him, because that was the only thing that gave me any pain relief from my back. Well, did I think, well, why is my back locking up? I should, it's probably because I'm stressing myself out. No, I just kept on taking more and more painkiller because I figured I don't have time to deal with this. I got to just do what I need to do. And so when we look at what is going on with our bodies, and one of the most early signs with our bodies is going to be back and shoulder stiffness. And the reason is because especially those of us who work at a desk, what we may not realize is that when we're stressed, we tend to hunch over. And when we hunch over, guess what? more pressure on our shoulders, more pressure on our back. So if you're looking at early warning signs and you address it, you can avoid some of these chronic diseases, whether it's diabetes, heart disease, cancer, etc. But if we don't look at that and we don't address that early on, it just builds up, builds up, builds up. And the next thing you know, now you've got a chronic disease that is problematic for the rest of your life. I have to deal with my diabetes for the rest of my life. I can't reverse that. And so now I have to take insulin, and I have to watch what I eat, etc. And so it's just, if I would have known that that's what I was going to be dealing with later in life, yeah, I would have taken more care of my body, but I didn't. And the thing was, it wasn't like I was sedentary either. I was exercising regularly. Yet I stressed my body so badly that the amount of exercise that I did didn't stop it from causing basically the weak link in your body. If you think about a chain in your body, whatever that weakest link is, that's going to break. And in my case, it was my pancreas.
Wow. What was that job that you had that was stressing you out so much?
So I was a digital marketing director for a medical device company. And so a couple of things that were problematic about that. One is it was a publicly traded company. So you have to deal with all of the trade, the FTC. But then you also have to deal with the federal government on making sure that anything you communicate is all within label of that have been approved by the FDA. So those two things, plus having a micromanager as a boss. And I remember thinking about this. So this person took over for a wonderful boss that I had, who I had followed to 4 different companies. Basically, my expertise was making him look good when he would bring me in, because I would revamp the whole digital marketing landscape in the companies. Well, when he left, he retired, and this other person took over for him. And this person she didn't trust anyone that worked for her. And so she micromanaged everything. And I was working on this very, very high profile project. And I was overloaded with stress because I couldn't do anything that she would approve, let's say. There was always something wrong because micromanaging. And so that's what I did. So I did it to myself. I shouldn't have let her get to me, but that's what happened.
All right. Okay. Well, yeah, stress is a killer. Absolutely. So going back to your book, before I dive into that a little bit more, is that by any chance available as a Audible book, or is it is it really? I have an Audible credit right now.
Great. So look for Lighten Your Day. Lighten Your Day. So yes, and it's actually my voice on there for Audible.
You narrated it.
Yes, I narrated it, and it's also available as a printed book if anyone likes the old school touch and feel, or it can be on the Kindle or other electronic distribution as well.
So when you narrate it, you go into like Audible Studios and like you sit in a foam room and all that, or?
I didn't go to Audible. I did it remotely, but yes, I was in a booth and doing the recording, and it was kind of weird because my book, especially when it comes to the techniques, it's not the first 3 or 4 chapters. Being able to narrate it flows nicely for me, but then when you get into the activities. These activities are snippets, because like I mentioned, it's 1 to 5 minutes, and so it was interesting, narrating just a block of something, and then there's another one that has nothing to do with the first, let's say the first activity, because they don't necessarily build on each other. organized in 7 different categories. So in one particular chapter, they'll be the same category, but they don't necessarily say like, if I do talk about laughter and then say, okay, now that we've talked about laughter, let's take it one step further and start writing laughter or something like that. It doesn't do it like that, because the reality is, if somebody is stressed, they're not going to go page by page through looking. What they're going to do is they're going to flip through it and find the first one that sounds good. And then they do that one and they try that one. And so narrating it like that, so each one just starts like fresh. And so it was interesting, because when I wrote the book, I thought about, you know what, I wonder if I should organize it like this way or that way. When I was actually narrating the book, then I was thinking about, I wonder if that one should go after this one. It's like, so it's funny how the different media made me think about it differently.
Right. Well, do you have a day job anymore, or are you?
I do.
What's your day job? You have the plant thing. Tell us
correct.
about tell us about the plant thing, and how does that relate to stress? Because I always hear like, oh, indoor plants relieve stress. Is that true? Is that why you do plants?
That's absolutely right. Well, originally why I got into the plant business was because I was working for the second company in a row that got bought out by its primary competitor. And so I thought to myself at that point, that was back in 2005, I thought about it and I said, I want to have a little bit more control over my career. And I always wanted to experiment with running my own business, more so than a consulting. I had done consulting in the past and did that for 5 years successfully. But I wanted something that was actually, that could work without me being, the one doing it specifically. So, and I didn't want to work in either a retail where you have the enormously long hours of having to be open, or a restaurant, because a restaurant requires the foot traffic to come in. I wanted to have something that was basically business hours. And so I happened to find this plant business that was struggling, and I decided to buy it. And that first year that I bought it, I thought I made the biggest mistake I had ever done, because it continued to lose business, and I was working.
Stressful.
Yes, and I was working more hours than I had ever worked, because I was still doing work on the corporate side, and I was doing this business, and I was easily working 100 hours a week, and so.
Crap.
But then what happened is I started realizing, after I got my stress-induced diabetes, that when I started doing the research, I found out how beneficial plants are in terms of cleaning the air. And what ends up happening is as humans, because we are mostly water, we're attracted to nature. And so when people have plants around them in the office environment, it actually has a clinically proven healthcare benefit to calm us. But it also does one other thing that's huge for businesses that want to have plants. It cleans the air. So what ends up happening is, especially in the wintertime when we have the flu seasons, well, guess what? Those plants are actually detoxifying the air. So they get the employees that have live plants in the office environment, on average, 11% less calling in for sick leave because they have a flu or a cold or whatever it happens to be. It's absolutely amazing. This is all university research for it. So it's not like I bought the plant business to reduce my stress, but it is a perfect one for once I realized what stress was doing to me, and finding out what, it was meant to be.
Right. So do you do plants just for offices, or also for homes?
No, just for offices. And the reason being is because it's a lot more efficient to do offices because you'll have a lot more plants and, again, daytime access. Going into people's homes have two challenges. One is if you think about where people live, it's out, farther away. So you'd be lucky if you had two customers right next door to each other or on the same street as each other. That's very difficult. So it's not cost effective to be going pinging to different homes. So that's one. And then secondarily, you have to have either somebody there, which is harder if it's at home, or you have to, get a key and go in there. And then all of a sudden somebody says, well, what happens, what happened to my diamond ring or something, or this disappeared or something like that. And it's like, okay, we have all the insurance and stuff for every one of our technicians, but the reality is it's just not worth it and it's not cost effective. So there's other companies that'll do homes. We don't do those. We do strictly businesses, and I'm glad we do it because what ends up happening is that we can have multiple customers in the same general area, and the same technician can do them on a daily basis, and we're just much more cost effective that way.
So you sell and service the plants. That's
correct. We do this. So basically what happens is we go in, we do a design, we do digital designs for a customer's location, and then we go ahead and we sell them or lease them the plants, whatever's better for their, for their accounting. And then we take care of them either on a weekly or biweekly basis.
All right, that sounds really cool. So just, a lot of people are listening to this, probably don't go to the office anymore, and they spend their time at home. What are a couple of good plants that you can have in your home that would clear the air and lower your stress? Anything you can recommend?
And ones that you wouldn't kill right away?
Yeah, right. Low maintenance. Easy
That's
not
exactly
to kill.
it. I always, for people, who do not have a green thumb, because that's another reason we have a business, is because a lot of people don't realize that it's actually harder to take care of an indoor plant than an outdoor plant. And people say, but why? Why is that the case? Well, it's because you've got to deal with artificial light. So, unless a plant is sitting right next to a window, and then if you think about it, a lot of the glass is typically polarized. So it's not getting necessarily the full treatment that a sun gives to an outdoor plant. But so on average, what would be the best plant for somebody to look for would be a sansevieria. It's also known as a mother's tongue or a snake plant. Those are considered low light plants, so they can grow fine in right next to a window. But if they're not next to a window, they actually can do fine as well indoors. So they do a wonderful job of cleaning the air. So I would look for at least indoor plants come in different size containers. So what if somebody in their home, they want to get one of these, I would suggest going to local nursery, Home Depot, wherever they can find a plant. And if they want to make sure that the air is being cleared next to their desk, get one that's in at least a 10-inch container.
Right on. Okay, so actually, I got to kind of wrap things up here, but I want to thank you so much. You have been great. What's the best way for people to get a hold of you?
Oh, probably the easiest way would be to go to my website, because that has my social media links if they want to connect with me. It's got a link to the book, my TEDx talks, both of them. So that's PeteAlexander.com, PeteAlexander.com.
All right, fantastic. Well, I have really enjoyed our conversation here today. I had a really great time, and I think it's because I laughed so much. So thank you so much. It's really been a joy to have you on 60 Plus Uncensored.
Well, Seb, thank you so much for having me on your show, and I greatly appreciate your listeners' time as well.
That's a wrap for this episode of 60 Plus Uncensored. Huge thanks to Professor Pete Alexander for setting the tone with such honesty and insight. Now, if you liked this episode, do me a favor, do Pete a favor. Hit that subscribe button, leave a review, and share it with someone you know who needs to hear it. Oh, and if you know anyone over 60 who's still out there doing big things, living boldly, working with purpose, or aging on their own terms, I would love to hear from you. Reach out at team60plus.com or join the conversation at 60 Plus Uncensored on Reddit. I'm Seb Frey, and this is 60 Plus Uncensored. Because as we're learning, life after 60 isn't the end, it's just getting good.
Subscribe now